As 2025 comes to a close, mark that down as another year in the Hollywood history books, where the industry continues to evolve at a frightening pace and theatrical fights for its life. We can't call it yet. It's looking scary. But I think amongst all that chaos, it's nice to see that Tinseltown can still not only make a good movie, but a great one. Some of you might disagree with that statement, but don't be such a Scrooge, man. There's got to be at least one movie that you thought was really great this year. I mean, at least I hope so. So we're going to talk about box office at the end of the month. We're going to talk numbers then. But right now, this is my own personal list of the top 10 movies of the year. And I'm excited to see your own down below, where we overlap and where we differ. Be nice. All right, so for me, a big focus is not just movies that I enjoyed, but movies that got me and audiences overall. You know, I love a good party. Excited about going out to the movies because that's where the magic still happens, I believe. Streaming is fun. Really, you know, there's a lot of good things about streaming, including what's on streaming. But I still think the theaters are where you make real memories, not just going to and from the theater, but even still within the theater itself, often thanks to interacting with the crowd around you. That's right, it can still be in a positive way. The crowd, responsible for both the good and bad parts of moviegoing. For almost every movie on this list, I'm very visually oriented, but which is one of the reasons I think I like comic books so much, but I viscerally remember the actual movie-going experience. And I have a snapshot in my mind, at least one, I can actually see the theater and the crowd around me. I really can. So, is that the way you are? I mean, people function differently, but I think if you really like visual mediums, you're visually oriented. So I'm curious to hear about your own movie memories of 2025. Although I must say, as much as gung-ho as I am about the industry, and I think you will be too by the end of this video, because these are some really good movies, I did have a bit of a hard time coming up with 10. 9? No problem. That was easy. But I had to have 10 because it's the top 10. And I wasn't sure what to put in this last spot. So here's what I decided on. Number 10, Materialists. And if you're like, what? Then you're like my friend who, when I told her about this list and I was making it, she was like, don't put Materialists on there. And I was like, oh, really? So I almost put Wake Up Dead Man here because I really loved its conversation about religion, its modern exploration of it. And I thought that Josh O'Connor did a really special job there. You can check out my review for my in-depth thoughts about that movie. But, you know, I kept thinking about it and I was like, gosh darn it, I really want to put Materialists on here. And it's my list, so I did. All right, and here's why. So I'll never forget the opening weekend of this movie, where for some reason it had buzz because everybody, of course, had really enjoyed, or at least you were supposed to enjoy, Celine Song's Past Lives. I liked parts of it quite a bit, and I thought that Greta Lee was obviously fantastic in that film. But this one, for some reason, out of nowhere, it had just exploded, at least in New York City. And so if you hadn't bought a ticket by Friday morning, early Friday morning, you weren't going. You know, I remember thinking of going again because I'd seen a press screening on a whim. I talking to some people being like, Materialist is a pretty good movie. And they were like, well, maybe we'll go. So I was trying to get tickets and I was like, oh my gosh, it's totally sold out everywhere. And as I said, I love a party. So that was really fun and exciting. And I remember where I was. I remember looking at the app and all the theaters being sold. And I just thought that was so great. It was also great to see the return of the romantic comedy. Or is that drama? You know, I would say Materialists is a romantic dramedy. How fun is that? And that's part of what makes it unique. But it still has the crisp urban fantasy visuals. It's like the first opening act of a Hallmark movie, right? They never go to the small town. They actually kind of do go to a small town in this movie, actually. Isn't that funny? But, you know, it's the type of movie that used to be very prolific and do quite well at the box office. And, you know, of course, they always had star power. I think writer-director Celine Song, who in fact was a matchmaker in real life before her filmmaking career took off, so she's actually had these conversations, I think she really captures what dating has become for certain demographics, right? And as again, someone who loves business, I really thought it was fascinating to see how people have come, well, and I think the movie makes the point that for a long time, people have viewed marriage as a business deal. And that's very, very interesting because we do live in a materialist world, right? Where those factors, whether you like it or not, do come into play. However, we are talking about marriage. So love also is part of the discussion, or absence of love. And so that makes it even more complicated and really, I think, creates this internal struggle of what do you want? And I think the movie captures that beautifully. And I think it has a very optimistic, lovely, but also realistic ending. As for the actors, yes, lots of star power, and Materialists, I think, is perfectly cast. And all the actors here, the main three, are really at the top of their game. They're all doing great work. But I think the person who stands out the most is Dakota Johnson. She really shines here with a song perfectly highlighting what makes Johnson so unique as an actress and as a personality, right? I mean, I think this was a difficult role to make understandable and sympathetic, although some of you might think that she failed, but I think she succeeded. I think Johnson does a very good job here. You know, her mother, of course, starred in one of the greatest romantic comedies of all time, Working Girl, which is very much a fantasy about business. So it's interesting that her daughter is here in Materialists, which is far more realistic, which is probably why it's not as fun as Working Girl, but I think it really resonates much more. That's right. Number 9, Superman. I'm doing it. I'm putting it on my list. And what's more, it's the only comic book movie on my list. Sorry, Marvel, although you might be on another of my lists in the next week or so. All right, so anyway. But as someone who is a lifelong Batman fan and who felt Superman had become a dated concept as we've become a more global and less innocent society, I was blown away at how James Gunn modernized and reinvigorated this story, not just Superman, but his supporting cast as well, and managed to still be faithful to the original concept. You know, so often when Hollywood tries to modernize something, right, it's no longer recognizable. And we're like, what have you done? Although some of you, of course, feel that way about Superman still, the Superman movie, although I believe it's because you're still sad about what happened with the Snyderverse. I mean, it's just, I think, like, if you look at it just on its own, it's a really good, I not only think it's a great Superman movie, but as I tweeted after I saw it, and I still feel this way, the best Superman movie ever made. Gunn managed to borrow from several iconic Superman comics that are very different and somehow blend them together seamlessly. And while the movie is very busy, at its core, I think what holds it together is that it's very much about the importance of being good. And that, of course, is what Superman has always been about. Maybe that's the real punk rock is a beautiful and brilliant line. The layers! It works on so many levels! And it was not only written by Gunn, but you gotta give credit to David Cornsweet, who delivered it. What a scene. Much like 2012's The Avengers, Gunn's Superman captures the spirit of comic books. Although I think one of the reasons it didn't do as well as Avengers back in 2012 was that Superman captures the quieter side of comics, you know, the weekly read. It's one of those comics where maybe it's not at the top of your stack, but it's a wonderful surprise when you read it. And you're like, wow, that was really good. And you fondly think of it every time you think of the title. You know, if you're a comic book reader, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So maybe James Gunn needs to go a little bit more for the Flash, right? Or speaking of DC, but, you know, a little more of the glitz and glamour and the big oomph. But I mean, I think it was really nice. And it was great to see a great comic book movie that was a little different and seemed to maybe be moving a little bit forward for the genre at a time when the genre overall is getting pulled into a black hole of sameness and repetitiveness. Which is why that Supergirl trailer was so weird, right? Because that has those problems. And it seemed more like a James Gunn movie than his own movie. That was also bizarre. On that note, the Supergirl trailer just came out. With Superman's trailers, that was a lot of fun. Even for those of us who weren't impressed, it was just great to see people talking about comic book movies again. And I think that the Superman trailer generated a ton of conversation, it was great. It was great to be kind of back in that fandom space that way, right? I thought it was really great. That was a great part, I think, of 2025. Not just the movie itself, but the lead up and then the discussion afterwards. It really was great. Superman is the most successful comic book movie of the year, and I can see why. By the way, we might be wrapping up a year of movies, but we're about to start another one. Oh boy! So be sure to subscribe for my full coverage of movies and shows in 2026. We're talking reviews and spoiler reviews, trailer reactions and breakdowns, box office and streaming charts, and of course, live streams on breaking news stories, and even more, all kinds of fun stuff. So again, be sure to hit that subscribe button so we have another great year to spend together, and why not turn on notifications so you know as soon as videos go up and you get a 30-minute heads up for when I'm about to go live. All right, so number 8, the Phoenician scheme. Oh, here's a nice surprise. You know, this is a smaller movie, and I'm sure a lot of you haven't seen it, but I hope by putting it on my list, you maybe check it out. Now, I'm sorry to admit that I did not see this in theaters. I didn't even get it on digital. I had wanted to see it, but I was like, the last couple of Wes Anderson movies have been not good. So I dragged my feet. I almost went to see it in theaters, but it just didn't gel, didn't come together. But then it was on Peacock for free, no extra cost. So I was like, okay, I'll watch it. And I'm so glad I did. Oh, it's great. Really, really good. This is a tremendous return to form for Wes Anderson. Up there with the Grand Budapest Hotel, or Budapest, thank you, and the Royal Tenenbaums. And interestingly, I think borrows a little bit from both of those films, but it's still its own thing. Now, again, I love business, and Benicio del Toro's Maverick Businessman is a wonderful creation, and his story is a fascinating one. Not just about deal making. I love his deal making. I love it. I love it so much, but also how family is still the most important. I thought that was really moving. And how family can be part of deal making too. Del Toro is having a banner year with this and One Battle After Another, but he's great in One Battle After Another. I think he might win the Oscar for One Battle After Another. Again, but this is, I think, it's a lead, and it's one of the best roles of his career. And in fact, he's the only actor that Anderson even considered for the role. And I'm really glad he said yes. Del Toro is from Puerto Rico, and here he's playing an Armenian. And I think what's interesting is that this movie has like a timeless quality to it. And also I feel like Omar Sharif back in the day would have played this role. And I'm a big Omar Sharif fan. So I think it's nice to kind of see that baton passed to Benicio here, that kind of character. The cast is star-studded across the board. Woo! But the most welcome surprise is Kate Winslet's daughter, Mia, who, you know, like being like the Grand Budapest Hotel and the Royal Tenenbaums, but still being its own thing, she has a lot of her mother's qualities as an actress, but she still totally feels like her own persona. You know, sometimes there are celebrity kids that would just seem like a mini version of their famous parent or parents. But Mia, you would never guess she was Kate Winslet's daughter unless someone told you, and then you can see it. But I think she's very talented. I liked her a lot here. And then Benny C. I got to give him a shout out because his cameo is amazing. It's so great. He not only looks really cool, as you can see here, but like the way his cameo, it's an extended cameo, and the way it escalates, oh, you could just feel it. Oh, I loved it. This was an instant personal favorite of mine. I watched it twice because I wanted to share it with other people. I was like, have you seen the Phoenician scheme? Let's watch it. Fire up Peacock. And I because again, I like business so much and family means so much to me. I think it's not only a well-made movie, but it's a personal favorite. It just hits me just right. Number 7, K-Pop Demon Hunters. What's going on here? I didn't watch the last movie in theaters. This one is basically a streaming movie. What happened to the point of my list about celebrating going to the theater? Well, we'll get back to that. But this is a really good movie. I mean, I do have mixed feelings about including it here, particularly as Netflix is about to gobble up Warner Brothers, and we're all very scared about the future of theatrical. Before it was like, they keep using a loophole, but whatever. But now you're like, wait a minute. But yeah, I included K-Pop Demon Hunters anyway, because it's that good. So let me tell you why. First off, it has a great story and an incredible soundtrack. I mean, it's just good. It was the soda pop sequence on YouTube, in fact, or maybe it was social media, but I saw the soda pop sequence and I was like, that's hilarious. And so that's what made me I was like, well, I'll try this thing. In fact, I was only going to start it while I had some lunch, and I just watched the whole thing through. I was like, cannot turn off. It was so good. And I appreciated how the film appealed both to my nerdy side, Demon Hunters, but also my, the fun adult flirty side that I hope that most of us have, right? With jokes that I wasn't expecting in a movie like this. Think James Bond, right? Where kids can watch James Bond. I did as a kid, but I didn't get nearly half of the jokes, right? Either they go right over your head or you just don't really, they just don't connect. And then when you rewatch it, or if you're watching it as an adult, you're like, oh, this is pretty spicy. I loved it. And I loved the world building and the extremely high quality animation. The facial expressions, though, to me were so magical. And I think that's what I love most about K-Pop Demon Hunters, that it depicts its female characters as real people, right? Like there's still these beautiful pop star princesses, but also they're silly and aggressive and funny and flirty. I love that. Very flirty. I love that. Which I think is not only fun to watch, but is a much needed development when it comes to female characters, when it comes to animation. That to me is just really great. I watched K-Pop Demon Hunters. Not only did I watch it, I meant to only watch it a little bit and then finished it. I watched it the very next day because I like to share the stuff that I like. So again, I was like, hey, have you seen K-Pop Demon Hunters? I watched it 2 days in a row. That's really unusual, but I think it's that good. As you can see, it just hit 500 million views on Netflix. I don't know if anything else will ever be able to catch it. It's incredible. And I listened to the soundtrack many, many times. Then when K-Pop Demon Hunters hit theaters for its sing-along, I happened to be walking by the Netflix theater where it was playing. And I was amazed to see fans of all ages. There was a big bus they had outside the theater, and people were just going crazy over this. And I tell you, I love a party. And when Hollywood is in a nostalgia era, which seems to be going on for an awfully long time, to see a new IP being born, I think is really cool. Number 6, Weapons. Woo! Back to the theater. And what a movie-going experience this was. I can't wait to hear your Weapons stories, because I know you have them if you saw this in theaters. I saw it first as a press screening, and then I went to see it again in IMAX. It's really fun to see, I think actually for the first time I saw this, I didn't get to go to the press screening. So I in fact went to like a 2 p.m. afternoon show, which I do remember this as well, because there were so many people there by themselves with A-list. And for the first time, it wasn't just all guys by themselves, but I saw a lot of women. That was the first time I think I started to see women going and using A-list as well, which I think is very exciting, because people always try and pretend that women aren't into movies. And so I'm really glad that that's changing even more so. We've always been there, but our numbers are growing. But anyway, I went to see it again. And it's always fun to see a movie again, particularly like this, because you know what's coming, so you can kind of even be more interested in the audience reaction. You're like, oh, here it comes. I wonder what they're going to do. And my second viewing audience did not disappoint. I think I shared this story once before, but during the second viewing, in that car sequence, I won't ruin anything, but in that car sequence, my entire audience gasped on the edge of their seat. I mean, the movie had them. So to hear everyone gasp in unison, and that is a big theater, that was magical. I still can see. I turned my head to look at the audience because it was so fun. That was great. It was also so fun to see everybody, because, the comedies don't come out as much anymore. I mean, there's comedic elements to big genre films, but we don't really have comedies anymore. So to have everybody laughing together during the Austin Abrams sequence was really also fantastic as well. I mean, this movie really landed. We're not only in the nostalgia era, but the spoiler era. So to be watching not just a new movie, but one where at least opening weekend, so much of it was not spoiled, was really special. You're like, oh my God, what's happening? And kudos to Warner Brothers. I mean, the restraint to not show Gladys anywhere in the ad campaign is incredible. That's something that nobody does these days. Although even when you watch old trailers from back in the day in Hollywood, you see they actually include stuff from the end there too. The thing is, when you're watching the trailer, you don't know it's the end. But it was a great surprise. And it really paid off, not just with the movie becoming an event, but Amy Madigan is probably going to get nominated for an Oscar, and she might even freaking win. I mean, that's incredible. It's an exciting time for the horror genre, which has always been popular, but now is, I think, at one of its peak, if not the peak of its popularity. And it's also starting to get artistic recognition. With this movie, Weapons and Sinners, which don't worry, is coming up on this list, But where? But yes, they're building off of last year's The Substance and, of course, Heretic. Okay, time for the top 5, baby. All right, this is where we get to the creme de la creme of the year. I mean, all these movies are good, but this is like the really good movies, but also where the competition gets fierce. Number 5, Wicked for Good. Oh, I'm sorry, Wicked fans, but it is still top 5. That's incredible. Especially because, I mean, I think even most of you would admit it's not as good as the first film. Although, interestingly enough, I went and checked, and I had that just a spot higher last year. Number 4. But still, this is very high. Although I'm sure for some of you, Wicked will be 1 or 2. But here's the difference. I think for those of you who place Wicked that high on your yearly list, it's because you've been a fan of Wicked since you saw the Broadway show, right? Or some version of it. I'm not one of those people. These movies introduced me to this story. And while they certainly made me a fan, I think that particularly with the second movie, just like with the Harry Potter movies, although I have come to really enjoy it, I think the Harry Potter movies benefited from watching them all together in a row. And interestingly, some of you who saw these 2 movies as a double feature have said that helps. So maybe it's the same thing. But I think, really being a fan of the original source material is helpful. So I was all in on the first Wicked. That I thought was an absolutely incredible movie. And so as we've discussed it in my coverage, I don't think the material was a good idea to split. I mean, that stood on its own. But the second half, not so much. Not a good idea to split it into 2 movies, at least the way they did it. So another issue, I think, is that my awards, you never get a chance to make a second chance to make a first impression. And I was so excited to see Wicked super early for awards as an awards voter. But as some of you commented when I posted a photo of the screening room, it was very tiny. And, my tweet really blew up, by the way, because I'd accidentally tapped into the drama of Ariana Grande missing the premiere in Brazil. But yeah, I think it did affect my experience. It made the movie feel small, right? Thankfully, I did go and see it again, opening weekend in Dolby, right? With a crowd full of fans. And it did feel more like a proper event. And it had a lot of, it was on the big screen and there was the energy of everybody's excitement all around me. And I continue to think Glinda's arc is really fantastic. But as I've said, I do think that Cynthia Erivo's Elphaba is a bit shortchanged in the second half. And while I found the film quite moving and with very important and timely messaging, to me, only Wonderful and Glinda's wrap-up, that sequence, really recapture the magic of the first film. In a lot of ways, what I like about Wicked for Good is that it's the end of the story in the first film that I loved so much. I wanted to see what happened. And I think the first film recaptures the magic of the classic Hollywood blockbuster musical. And it was really cool to see that Hollywood could still do that. Sometimes you think these things are lost, right? I know a lot of you complained about the color grading. If only John Chu had gone Technicolor. But, it's really great to see that this type of wedding cake musical can still be made. Number 4, F1 the movie. Who'd have guessed that Joseph Kosinski would turn out to be a good director, especially after Tron Legacy and Oblivion. I mean, those movies look good, but they were not good. A lot of us thought that maybe Top Gun Maverick was a fluke, or perhaps secretly due to Christopher McQuarrie's involvement. He certainly helped rewrite that third act. It's got his fingerprints all over it. But with F1, I think Kosinski proves that he's turned a corner as a director. Oh, I'm excited about whatever he makes. I think he's doing Miami Vice next. I think he's going to knock that one out of the park too. Here we have a movie that perfectly captures the sport of F1 racing. Sleek, beautiful, glamorous, and exciting. Oh, Hollywood has made a lot of great racing movies. I love a lot of them. But again, I also love business. And in some ways, F1 the movie combines the classic Hollywood racing movie with a look under the hood at how this industry is evolving. It's a little bit like another Brad Pitt movie, Moneyball, but with more excitement even. Not only is Pitt himself in full movie star mode here, but he elevates others, particularly Mr. Javier Bardem, who goes from Bond villain to looking like Bond himself. The suits that he wears in this movie are like an F1 car themselves. And that Hans Zimmer score, oh boy, that's a thing of beauty. He's still got it. I listened to his F1 track on a loop, still to this day, even though the movie came out months ago. It's so energizing, and it's beautiful. You know, sitting in the IMAX theater, you feel like you're in that car on that track with Pitt. And at one point in the film, he says that at just the right moment, the reason he does this is that you feel like you're flying. And of course, at that pinnacle moment in the third act, the movie actually allows you to share in that feeling. And that is really incredible. Number 3, Sinners. You know, it's a real gamble for an awards contender to come out before September. Sometimes it works, like for Everything Everywhere all at once. But 2025 ended up being very strong for awards films in the fall and winter. I think when One Battle After Another came out, that really shifted everything. But even Weapons in August, also in the horror space, has turned out to be a strong competitor, all of which have put Sinners' awards chances in real jeopardy. Not for nominations, but I think for wins. I think, you know, it's really it ended up being an extremely competitive year. But I loved this movie, and as you can see, it's very high up on my list. I truly think it's not only one of the best films of the year, but an important moment for the horror genre and also for Black film, where a Black director has yet to win the Oscar, which is insane. Right off the bat, you know the movie is great, with Ryan Coogler's writing and directing, and of course Michael B. Jordan's charisma times 2 as twins Smoke and Stack, a devil and an angel. Yes, Sinners aspires to be more than just a great genre film, and rightfully so, brought to mind for many the first episode of Lovecraft Country, a magic that show couldn't recreate for the rest of its season, which was a shame. Coogler is clearly a student of many different mediums and also artists. You know, Christopher Nolan is such a force as a director, but I think what's admirable about him is that he's working now, not only is he Christopher Nolan, the head of the DGA, becoming the head of the Directors Guild, but he is really working hard to raise up the next level of directors, from Denis Villeneuve to Ryan Coogler. And he promoted Dune 2 very hard for Oscars. And this year he's working very hard to help Ryan Coogler. And I think that's fantastic. You know, that's really great. It's, you know, I talked about Peter Dinklage closing the door behind him, but, you know, Christopher Nolan not only left the door open behind him, but is reaching back to help pull people through. And I think that's really great. And I think I think he's right to recognize the fantastic talent that is Ryan Coogler. I liked Ryan Coogler since his very first film, which I interviewed him for, Fruitvale Station. He's very, very talented. But so Coogler pours so much into this movie, not just from cinema, but his own life, his own experiences, and that of his family members and friends. And I think that's why the movie really, I think, feels so authentic and real the way it does. It just really is rich. It's a rich movie. I think that's a great way to describe it. But of course, it's the musical sequence in the middle where I think everybody can know I think everyone, speaking of movie memories, I'm sure every one of you who saw this, particularly in theaters, remembers what it was like when when that sequence like leveled the entire movie up and opened it up. And you were like, oh, wow, this isn't just a good movie, but it's a work of cinematic art. It not only allows the film to like be truly special, but it shows that it isn't afraid to stand on its own and to not only represent largely the Black community, but I think it does a lot to represent a lot of communities of color and communities that have been, not seen well in America, which is why I think fascinatingly, the Irish were included in the conversation. It's just a really, really good movie. Coogler is doing for high concept blockbusters. You know, there have been a lot of Black directors who've worked in the blockbuster space previously, but I don't think that many of them had the signature style that you've seen Black directors have in other genres and that Coogler is bringing to blockbusters, first with Black Panther and now with his own original idea, Sinners. This movie is not only very good, but it's a very big deal. Runner up, number 2, Marty Supreme. Everyone's talking about Timmy C these days. And hey, is that the mark of a successful ad campaign or someone imploding their career? We'll find out. So far, Marty's doing quite well in at least limited release. Now, Chalamet seems to not just be drinking his own Kool-Aid at the moment, but mainlining it. However, as I've said, once you see for yourself that he actually delivers with Marty Supreme, and I've seen a couple of people start to tweet that as people begin to see the movie, you see he's earned his current bravado. And remember, he's not just an actor on Marty Supreme, but he's one of the main producers. Despite, though, the amazing run that he's on, which he has brought up himself, but I mean, come on, he is on an amazing run, right? It's still very early on in his career, which also kind of makes it exciting. Like, what could he be doing next, considering how much he's already done? And it's also very early days for the career of Josh Safdie. So I think that while they're also going to get a lot of nominations, I don't know how many they're actually going to win this time around. But I hope that doesn't diminish their unbridled enthusiasm for film. Yes, while it might seem that Timmy C is in love with himself, he's in fact, I think, really in love with cinema. And what you're seeing is the high of anyone who feels that they're not only getting to be a part of something they love, but connecting with it so strongly and deeply that it's like they become one. I mean, I think that's what he's feeling. I wish that, at least that's how I depict it. I wish that more artists of all ages were as passionate about making great movies and being a part of the legend of Hollywood and contributing to it as Timmy C. And I think Josh Safdie. The only person I can think of right now who's doing that is Seth Rogen. And I think that Marty Supreme, in fact, shares a lot of qualities with the studio. It's really beautiful. And I think that once you see this movie again, you'll see that Timmy C does have more balance and nuance than his PR campaign would suggest, right? He does acknowledge within the film that big winner energy isn't always enough, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't see yourself as a winner, right? Dream big, the movie's tagline, takes on new, softer, and more inspiring meaning once you see the film. It's really great. My audience applauded at the end of the movie. And I think that's the only time that happened for me in seeing a movie in a theater this year. Number one battle after another. This is the front runner for Best Picture, almost a shoo-in. And I agree. So I promised you some stories about movie theater experiences. Here's a really good one. So this was a very early critic screening. I think the first screening for the film that I was invited to. And it was in the morning, very early in the morning. I snuck in a bagel. So another journalist or critic came in with a rolling suitcase. And another attendee who knew him shouted, "I thought you were headed to Toronto for the film festival." To which this man exclaimed, "Oh, I moved my flight. I'm not missing this movie." And I thought that was a bit much. I was like, come on, buddy. But of course, now here we are with one battle after another. As I said, the strong frontrunner for multiple Oscars. Again, probably going to win Best Picture and probably going to win Best Director, as Paul Thomas Anderson has yet to win. And he's further along in his career than, Ryan Coogler. I would think Ryan Coogler, if it weren't for Paul Thomas Anderson, Ryan Coogler might win this. But again, his movie came out, a couple of months ago. But it didn't stop everything everywhere all at once. But Paul Thomas Anderson, it's just, a lot of times with the Oscars, it's like someone's time. It's Paul Thomas Anderson's time. And this is a great movie. It's funny. Speaking of being a bit much, I thought this movie was a bit much the first time I saw it. I was like, I don't know if I like this. But I liked the second 2/3 when it got to the current timeline. And I could see the clear influences of Christopher Nolan and the Coen brothers, which intrigued me. And the third act car chase, instant cinema classic. Even right away, everybody could see that was brilliant. But after I saw the movie, the more I thought about it, the more I started to like it. And also, so I loved also Benicio del Toro right away. I was like, he's your standout. But the other performances have grown on me as well, the more I think about them. And I began to see this movie as something that perfectly captured where we are right now in the world. And we're such a crazy place. The fact that this movie can capture it is impressive. But not only that, it does it with nuance and humor while still remaining serious, because this is a serious issue, but also balance. I think that this movie managed to do something a lot of things in Hollywood can't do these days, and that's that it does not seem preachy. But what's also cool about it is that the more you watch it, the better it gets. It's also insanely gifable and memeable. And I love seeing how it's become a part of pop culture so quickly. I've loved seeing the clips on social media. I think that's just fantastic. And for this movie to be like that, this is a drama. In some ways, a Western film noir. But the fact that it's able to be able to capture people's imagination in the pop culture space, I think speaks to its quality and its performances. I like it being a Western film noir. I think it's really great. And that Hollywood can still make a movie like this. They can still do it which not only has a strong message, but is still a piece of entertainment and is a fine example from top to bottom of craftsmanship in the art of film. That's fantastic. Again, I think it deserves to win Best Picture. And there it is, my top 10 lists for 2025. I feel good about it. It makes me feel good about myself. I'm like, I'm happy with how this list represents me. Again, be nice. And then also, I like what it says about movie making. That movie making still got it. And that the theatrical experience can still be special. Oh, that's really fantastic. I'm excited to see your lists down below. And I'd love to know which movie you think will win Best Picture and which movie you think should win Best Picture. And of course, also be sure to share some of those movie memories you forged in 2025. Share all those thoughts down below and lists. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.